welcome back to the Shuffle Squad. Zach Lesage here. Today we're going to be covering over the top 10 best decks of the week. We just had Monterey Regionals where I was able to make top 64, so I have some hands-on knowledge of how the metagame actually played out. We're going to be updating our list from some top players, top placements, all that good stuff, and adjusting them against each other so you know which decks are the absolute best. Included are going to be the deck lists. You can go into the pinned comment right now and copy and paste those lists right into PTCG Live, or collect them on your My Limitless deck builder. If you need these cards in real life, check out our sponsors at Kayfabe Cards, or if you need them online, check out our sponsors at ptcgostore.com. See exactly how this video goes, but remember to always give it a like, share, subscribe. Of course, let me know what you think the top 10 best decks are. Let's jump into it. At our number 10 deck this week, we have Blissy EX. Now, Blissy EX was not a deck that I was necessarily expecting to put on this list, but we have our current world champion who came second at Monterey Regionals, piloted all the way to the finals, and we got the Blissy EX that moves the energy from our Pokemon, so you could either power up a Cornerstone really easily, or you could use something like Monkey Dory, move an energy from Monkey Dory to another Monkey Dory, etc., to have kind of an unstoppable Blissy EX. I know we've seen concepts like this in the past, but with Dragapult reaching all-time highs, it seems like anti-Dragapult is a great way to kick off this list. So if you're looking to beat Dragapult locally, Blissy EX might just be that way to make that deck work. And with Precious Trolley getting out all those different Monkey Dories and all of these cool cards like Turbo Energize, giving this deck a lot of synergy, seems like a pretty good pick going forward. Might get countered a little bit as we look into Milwaukee Regionals and other events heading around the world, but that's the rogue deck lifestyle. So at number 10, that's what we got going on. Let's see what we got going on at number 9. At number 9, we have Terabox. I've taken some notes from Yurko, who made top 4 at Monterey. I have not included Cornerstone in this list because I'm not sure if we entirely need it in this metagame, where some decks like Blissy need to have an extra kind of Pokemon to sometimes give you the opportunity to slow down the game. I think that this fast-paced version of Terabox with the 4 Crispins really should just kind of light a fire up under our opponent and really show them what's up. Tastefully teched for our current metagame, and just really having all these options, whether you want to use Terapagos for an easy attack, Pikachu EX for a big attack, or you're using Lilies to counter your opponent's Dragapult or Raging Bolt. Terabox seems to have it all. It's fallen a little bit in the metagame because people have found other decks or found strategies against it, so it's not the same dominant force it was in Japan, but this deck is incredibly powerful, and I think we're getting to a point where almost all decks in the top 10 are very worthy competitors, which is something that we don't necessarily always see in every single metagame. What do you think about Terabox? Let me know in the comments below. At number 8 this week, we have Archaladon EX with Poison. Not much has really changed about this archetype, and I think it's really going to be one of those decks that's just kind of existing in our metagame right now. It doesn't necessarily seem bad, doesn't necessarily seem like the greatest. It's enough within the top 10 decks where it's just like floating around. And I think that the Archaladon lifestyle using Assemble Alloy, accelerating energies, that part's fantastic. That's something that a lot of players really like. And also having the Poison Donk aspect. We've seen this in a handful of decks, Roaring Moon, and even over the weekend we've seen some players experiment with Gouging Fire. So I think that there's the makings of a really strong Poison deck here. We might see some players experiment with different decks, whether it's the Roaring Moon or the Gouging Fire, but I do think some kind of Poison deck or some kind of Archaladon deck does really kind of stick within our top 10 right now. Where will it be next week? Well, that's why you tune in every single week. I know a lot of y'all are, you love the deck list. You came up, you take selfies with me at tournaments. I appreciate all the love, by the way. If you ever see me at a tournament, I'm always down to have a conversation. I'm always down to chill. But for those of you who are like, the metagame might not change, or it's the same list as last time, might be Gouging Fire next week. It could be Roaring Moon next week. And I think it's the little changes there that go there, the little changes between the deck lists. Anyways, I could rant on forever. Let's see what I got going on at number 7. At number 7 this week, we have Raging Bolt EX with the Noctowl package. Now, it's a deck that's been around since it ever came out in Temporal Forces, or when Teal Mask came out in Twilight Masquerade, but going with the Noctowl package allows us to search directly for the cards we want, like Professor Sada's Vitality. This build is the same all Blitzel, Kristen Fontenot kind of build that we saw at Atlanta, being able to have single prize card attackers to attack against your opponent's Pokemon. I think nothing's really changed between this week and the last week. It was well teched for Dragapult and Gardavore. It continues to stay well teched for Dragapult and Gardavore. And which decks were in the top 4 of the tournament? Well, there's some Dragapult and there's some Gardavore at Monterey. So don't want to necessarily give anyone ideas about how this list might end up, but countering those decks seems like a pretty great idea right now, and Raging Bolt has some answers here. Raging Bolt doesn't necessarily counter them as much as it wants to, which is why it's sitting at number 7, but we might see some improvements to this list over the next week, and that might just take it all the way so that I can compete with the top few decks. We're almost at our halfway point of this list, so let's see what we got going on at number 6. At number 6, we have a surprise deck that I think is really going to start taking over a lot of tournaments, and that's Joltic with Miraidon. Now, Joltic is a 30 HP little Pokemon, but its Jolting Charge attack allows us to accelerate Grass and Lightning energies to our various Pokemon in play. And that means that we could get off at Iron Hands, we could attack with Miraidon, we could search them all out, and there's some tasteful techs here. We saw Tyler Matthews take this all the way to a top 8 finish at Monterey Regionals, and while you might be like, hey, how come this deck made top 8 and then Blissy came second and this deck's number 6? I think based off how the metagame naturally approaches this, I think that Joltic's going to go on and take the torch. It's gonna see some success at Milwaukee because people like that big, aggressive, big basic decks. Whereas Blissy, the Blissy Monkey Dory is a deck that I experimented with when Twilight Masquerade or when Blissy first came out or whatever. It's one of those things where Blissy is going to be the flavor of the day. This is going to be the flavor of the rest of the format for a certain degree, or at least that's my hunch. So either way, I think Joltic seems like a pretty cool deck. Pretty aggressive, pretty well positioned in the metagame, and you have to see exactly how it goes. But we have 5 decks that I think are fantastic. Might be a little bit of a cut above the rest, and this is where things might get a little bit polarizing. You might be like, Zach, I don't know if I like your opinion anymore, but let's see what we've got cooking at number 5. At number 5, we have the Eevee Box featuring Flareon and Sylveon. This is a deck that myself and Gabriel Smart played. We both made top 64 at Monterey, and I think the deck is very well positioned in our current metagame. And it's something that I didn't necessarily realize until I truly got to Mexico. I've been cooking with this deck for a while. You can see that I've posted some videos on it before. I have the deck built in real life, and I did some tabletop gameplay with Blake. But learning how Goldango, one of the top decks, is weak to fire, and you can go Burning Charge, you can use Briar and all that great stuff. And then Sylveon allows you to do double, like you have double damage with Elise Clefairy against Dragapult, and there's a lot of stage 2 Pokemon decks. We have strong answers between Magical Charm, Angelite, Burning Charge, Carnelian knocks out a lot of things, and of course we can go toe-to-toe with a lot of other decks. While I ended up going 7-1-4, only taking 1 loss, the deck ties quite a few times because Angelite strategies take a while. I think if you're able to really kind of work on this deck, work on some lines of play, I felt I got a little bit unlucky at Monterey, and I know Gabriel kind of thought the same thing. This deck might actually end up being able to take Milwaukee. So it's one of those decks that I wouldn't necessarily sleep on. I was sleeping on it before, even though I was cooking with it. And I have to shout out Nathan Stratford and Gabriel Smart for all the help with this deck list. Probably going to update it some more in the future, but stay tuned on all that great stuff. Let's see what we got going on at number 4. At number 4, we have Dango EX with Dragapult. Now, I really struggle every week, truly struggle, and it's where do I put Dango? Do I use Dango as just itself? Do I exclude Dragapult? Goldango is a Goldango deck, and right now I think that they've kind of merged together where the most successful build for Dango is Dango Dragapult, and that's what I'm going to go with right now. So there's no other Dango on this list. It's not separated. Do I think that the Dunsparce and Scizor builds are kind of good? Yes. I think that there's a lot of cool things that you could do with them, or just straight up Goldango EX. But we saw a lot of top players like Caleb Rogerson and Grant Shen. They played this in Monterey, saw a deep run, and coin bonus, being able to use Dracloak as your draw engine and having the option to attack with Dragapult EX is really cool. We saw this previously in Atlanta with Gabriel Smart and Caleb Gettimer playing the deck, and I think really we have a lot of top players that are really showing how strong this deck could be, especially when they include cards like Genesect. So while it's tough to put the pin on where Dango is really going to lie in our formats, do I think it should be separated into a single deck? I think a lot of people are leaning towards Dracloak as the draw engine with Dragapult as a bonus attacker, which sounds a little bit better than having Dunsparce as an attacker, or as a draw engine, and Dunsparce EX as an attacker. So some pretty cool builds here, like, but we'll see how the Dango Chronicles work for the rest of the format. Let's see what we got cooking at number 3. At number 3, we have Dragapult EX with Dusknoir. I believe this is the list that Aiden Koos was able to make 17th place with. We didn't really see as many players play straight up Dragapult EX with Dusknoir at Monterey as I was expecting. I mean, there was a lot of players in the room playing this deck, but top players seemed to pick other decks for this event. Maybe it was just the way that they didn't want to necessarily approach Mirror. Maybe there's other better ways to be playing Dragapult. But overall, this is my personal favorite way of playing Dragapult. I think this list is absolutely amazing. And when it comes down to anything that I change, I think this is going to be the default Dragapult Dusknoir list for pretty much the rest of the format, taking Andrew Hedrick's list, cutting Lux Cape for Bravery Charm, and Bravery Charm seems a little bit better in this case. So I like the change that Aiden made. Great job on all of success. And I think we're going to see a lot of it at Milwaukee, because a lot of people have been prepping since Atlanta for that event, and they're probably just going to lock in on their deck list. Let's see what we got cooking at number 2. At number 2, we have Gardavore EX. And you might be like, yo, Zach, Gardavore EX won the regional. So I have a few things that are out of order than you might have necessarily thought, but I think that Gardavore EX won because Brent won. I think that Gardavore EX is incredibly powerful, but it takes an incredibly powerful, strong player to pilot this deck perfectly. And I think that's what we're going to see with Henry Chow, Brent Tonneson, a handful of other players that are really great at playing Gardavore as we go forward. So I wouldn't be surprised if Gardavore starts sweeping these regionals, but it seems that overall the players that play Dragapult end up going further. They just don't win the event. So across the board, Gardavore did okay, but then it ended up winning the event. That's what's holding it back at number 2. I do like the changes that Brent made to the list from Henry Chow's list. It's a lot more straightforward with just more supporter-based draw, Cleffa. It feels like a more consistent version of Henry Chow's list, and that's really what I like about this deck. So fantastic list, fantastic player. Not a number 2. What's going to be at number 1? Well, you're about to find out. Put your guesses in the comments if you haven't already. Like this video, share, subscribe, and of course, don't forget to check out the pinned comment if you want to get all these deck lists. Let's see what we got going on at number 1 this week. Our number 1 deck of the week is going to be straight up Dragapult EX. No true techs outside of the handful of one-ofs like Monkey Dory, Genesect, Hawlucha. Being able to shut off your opponent's energy, Search Pro, shutting off your opponent's unfair stamp kind of stuff with Genesect, being able to push damage counters back with Monkey Dory, and of course having all the techs necessary to give your Pokemon more HP, moving energies, all that stuff. It just seems like this deck screams like it's the best deck in format, and you have players like Tanner Hurley that end up going back-to-back top cuts, featuring his list this week. So I think Dragapult might just be better by itself, or at least in a case where Dragapult Dusknoir exists. This might be better in a Dragapult Dusknoir mirror, but it has all the tools necessary to tackle on the metagame. I think Genesect was an incredibly hot tech that we've seen for last week, and we're seeing it continue on this week. Are we going to see it continue on till Milwaukee? Question mark. We'll have to find out. And right now, Dragapult EX, absolutely fantastic play. I think any deck playing Dragapult. It was featured 3 times on this list. It was featured before in Regidrago. Phantom Dive is just a broken attack. So if you're trying to play some broken Pokemon and do amazing things, Dragapult's probably part of the solution. But that's what we got going on for this week. Let me close things out. That's what we got going on for our video this week. I hope you enjoyed learning more about the metagame. And of course, we always have these videos on the Friday of every single week where there's not necessarily a huge major, at least one in North America or Europe. and we have them on Thursdays to give everyone an extra day to prepare. So for Milwaukee, it's going to be next week, but we'll see how the rest of the metagame plays out. I'm really excited to share that information. If anyone's trying to prepare for Milwaukee, I do have some availability for coaching, so hit me up, whether it's Milwaukee, any event, anything else like that. Other than that, I will let all y'all enjoy your weekend. Much love, peace out, and have a great one. Want to support the Shuffle Squad? Be sure to check out all of our sponsors in the description to pick up Pokemon TCG singles, sealed, and PTCG live codes.
Tabi no hajimari wa tsune ni michi e no ippo de aru. Sore wa yami e to tsuzuku. 初めの一歩を踏み出すには勇気がいる。そして旅の終わりには旅を始めた時の自分とは別人になっているかもしれない。旅に出よう。物語の次の章がお主を待っている。将軍の道を歩め。侍の箱とともに。アルティメットガードが送る冒険の第一章。刀将軍の道近日発売。
Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope that you enjoyed the content that we have today, and maybe you'll click on one of these other videos, enjoy those videos too. If you haven't already, give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and let us know in the comments what video you want to watch next. Until next time, we'll catch up with all y'all later. Have yourself a great day.